It wasn't just another cut. It wasn't a simple injury. What was hiding beneath that small wound would leave everyone in shock. A firefighter's K9, loyal and brave, was about to reveal a dark secret, one that could change everything. This is a story of a bond that's forged in fire between a firefighter and his K9. You might think a little cut on a dog's leg wouldn't be anything to worry about, but this wasn't just a cut. What happened next would uncover something far more sinister, something that could threaten both their lives. Stick around as we dive deep into this emotional and shocking tale. Before I tell you what mystery unfolds, can I ask you something small? If you believe that no animal should ever suffer in silence, and that K9 heroes deserve our utmost respect, please hit that subscribe button. Firefighters are, by nature, accustomed to facing dangerous and unpredictable situations, from racing into burning buildings to saving people trapped in wreckage. Every shift is filled with life-or-death decisions. But despite their experience and bravery, nothing could have prepared one firefighter for what he would discover one quiet evening after a routine shift. For Officer John Carter, the firehouse was home. His partner, Diesel, a German Shepherd, was his constant companion, not just in the field, but in life. Diesel was more than just a K9. He was a brother, a confidant, and a friend. Together, they had faced unimaginable challenges. They had rescued families from burning homes, located missing children, and even apprehended dangerous criminals. Diesel's loyalty and skill had saved John's life more than once, and John had always kept an eye on Diesel's well-being, knowing full well that the dog was a warrior in his own right, strong, fearless, and built to endure. But on this particular day, after a long, exhausting shift, John noticed something wasn't right. Diesel, who usually bounded over to greet him after every shift with that signature wag of his tail, wasn't acting like himself. John felt a familiar pang of concern in his chest. Diesel's usually energetic and eager demeanor had been replaced by something quieter, more subdued. It started with a small limp. Diesel's usual confident stride was a little off. At first, John thought it was just fatigue. The dog had been on his feet for hours, just like him. But the limp didn't go away, and that's when John's instincts kicked in. Diesel wasn't the type of dog to show weakness, especially not after everything they had been through. Something was wrong. John bent down to examine Diesel's leg, looking for any obvious signs of injury. Diesel, as always, was patient, allowing his partner to check him over. But then, John noticed it, a small cut on Diesel's paw. At first, John breathed a sigh of relief. It was just a minor injury, nothing to worry about. It could have been from a thorn or a piece of debris from the environment, maybe even a scrape from their training sessions. But as John's fingers traced the edges of the wound, he felt a strange hesitation in his gut. Something about it didn't sit right. It wasn't just the injury that concerned him. It was Diesel's body language. The dog's eyes were tired, and there was a subtle stiffness in his movements that John had never seen before. Diesel wasn't a dog that shied away from discomfort. He had endured far worse in the line of duty, even recovering from a bullet wound just a year prior. Yet here he was, acting as though this minor cut was more than just a superficial scrape. John squatted down, trying to gauge Diesel's condition. He reached out to touch the dog's ear, a gesture of comfort. Diesel let out a soft, almost imperceptible sigh. His head drooped slightly, as if carrying the weight of an invisible burden. "Hey, what's wrong, boy?" John murmured, his voice tinged with concern. Diesel responded with a soft whine, his tail giving only the faintest of flicks. It was enough to send a ripple of unease through John's chest. This was not the Diesel he knew. John straightened up and took a deep breath. He was a seasoned firefighter, but when it came to Diesel, he was a protective, almost overbearing father figure. He had been with the dog through thick and thin, and in his eyes, Diesel was family. The thought that something could be wrong with him, something more than just an injury, was enough to gnaw at John's mind. "All right, let's take a look at this properly," John said, his voice firm but filled with an underlying concern. He was used to rushing into chaotic situations, but this was different. Diesel was more than just a tool in his job. He was a teammate, and teammates looked out for each other. John gently lifted Diesel's paw, trying to get a better look at the injury. It wasn't bleeding heavily, but there was something about it that caught his attention. The skin around the cut looked raw, slightly irritated, as though it had been rubbing against something for a prolonged period of time. But how had Diesel gotten this injury? It wasn't like they had been in any situation recently where he would have gotten hurt. There were no sharp rocks, no obvious sources of injury, just the cut and the nagging feeling that something more was at play. John knew Diesel was tough, tougher than most humans, for that matter, but he had never seen him react this way to something so small. Still, John tried to shake off the concern. Probably just a little scrape. Nothing to worry about, he muttered to himself. Diesel had been through worse, after all. But as John stood up, something made him hesitate. Diesel was still lying on the ground, not even attempting to stand, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. John looked down at his partner, who was now lying motionless, his head resting on his paws. There was a silence that filled the room, one that was both eerie and unsettling. Diesel's usual playful demeanor had been replaced by an air of unease, almost like he was waiting for something, or perhaps hiding something. It was then that John's got twisted with that all-too-familiar feeling, the one he had learned to trust over the years. There was something wrong here, something more than just a simple injury. He wasn't sure what it was, but he could sense it in the pit of his stomach. Diesel was hiding something. John didn't know what that something was, but he knew he couldn't just let it slide. His partner, his friend, deserved better than that. He carefully placed Diesel's paw back down and walked over to grab the phone. It was time to get to the bottom of this. Diesel wasn't just any dog, he was a hero, and John wasn't about to let him suffer in silence. The phone rang as John dialed, the sound of the ringing echoing through the empty firehouse. He wasn't sure who to call at first, but he knew he needed to get help. Diesel's condition wasn't something that could be brushed off. "Hello, Dr. Simmons?" John's voice was tight with concern as the phone was answered on the other end. "Yes, John, what's going on?" Dr. Simmons asked, his tone calm and measured. He had been the veterinarian that treated Diesel through his past injuries, and John trusted him. He had to. "I've got a problem with Diesel. There's a small cut on his paw, and he's acting strange. I've never seen him like this before. He's limping, but it's more than just a scrape. I don't know how to explain it. There's something wrong, document." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, followed by the sound of papers shuffling. "All right, John, you know what I'll say next. Bring him in so we can take a closer look. We can't take any chances, especially with a dog like Diesel. I'll be here in an hour." John nodded, even though he knew Dr. Simmons couldn't see him. "Thanks, document. I'll be there soon." As he hung up, John turned back to Diesel. The dog hadn't moved an inch. His eyes were half closed, and he seemed to be in a kind of trance, his usual watchful nature replaced by an odd, almost distant calm. The fireman couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Diesel, after everything they'd been through, shouldn't be acting like this. Sure, Diesel was a tough dog, but John had seen him handle much worse injuries, without batting an eye. This was different. It wasn't just physical. It felt like Diesel was hiding something. The thought lingered in John's mind as he grabbed Diesel's leash and gently coaxed him out of the firehouse. Diesel stood slowly, hesitating as if every movement was a conscious effort. John's heart sank a little more with each step Diesel took. This wasn't just about a limp. It was about something much bigger, something neither of them could fully understand yet. As they loaded Diesel into the truck, John kept glancing at his partner. Diesel sat quietly in the back, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, but there was a sadness to him now, a sorrow that John hadn't seen before. It was almost like Diesel was resigned to something he couldn't escape. The drive to Dr. Simmons' clinic was a blur. The engine of the truck hummed as John's mind raced, trying to piece together what was happening. What had caused Diesel to react this way? Could it have been something from their last training session? Maybe it was the heat, or maybe they had encountered something on their latest call. But Diesel was always so strong. He had been through worse, right? John's thoughts were interrupted when they arrived at the clinic. The familiar scent of antiseptic and the soft hum of the fluorescent lights greeted him as he stepped into the small but well-kept office. Dr. Simmons was waiting by the counter, his lab coat neatly pressed. "Come on in, John," Dr. Simmons said, his voice calm, though John could hear the underlying concern. John led Diesel into the back, where the vet's examination table stood. Diesel, despite his usual reluctance to be examined, hopped up onto the table with little encouragement. There was something incredibly obedient about him, a trust that never wavered, no matter the circumstance. Dr. Simmons ran his hands gently over Diesel's leg, examining the injury once again. He poked and prodded the small cut on the paw, frowning as he did so. "Seems like a small laceration, but there's something else going on here," Dr. Simmons muttered under his breath. He picked up a flashlight and peered closely at the wound. "Does Diesel seem unusually fatigued to you?" John nodded. "I've never seen him like this before. He's always been so full of energy. He just doesn't feel like himself." Dr. Simmons was quiet for a long moment. He examined Diesel's leg more thoroughly, his brow furrowing as he ran his fingers over the skin around the wound. There was a deep tension in the room, one that John could almost taste. Finally, the vet spoke. his voice low and serious. "There's something more to this, John. I think we need to take an x-ray." John's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected that. "An x-ray?" John echoed. "But why? I thought it was just a small cut." Dr. Simmons didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for the phone and made a quick call. John could hear him speaking with one of his assistants, arranging for the necessary equipment. "We'll take the x-ray, and then we'll see what's really going on." As the x-ray machine hummed to life, John's mind was filled with questions. Diesel was always so strong, so resilient. Could he really be hurt? And if he was, what was the cause? Dr. Simmons wheeled over the x-ray machine, and the two men waited in silence as the vet slid the film into place. John felt his pulse quicken, the weight of the moment heavy on his shoulders. When the image came into view, everything seemed to slow down. Diesel's leg, which had once seemed like an ordinary injury, now looked entirely different under the bright light of the x-ray machine. John's eyes scanned the image, searching for something, anything, that would explain what was wrong. What he saw wasn't what he expected. There were irregularities in the bone structure around the wound, small fractures, more like stress fractures than anything else. But that wasn't what made John's blood run cold. What made him stop breathing was what lay beneath the fractures. The vet's hand hovered over the image. "John, I think you should take a look at this." John's eyes followed Dr. Simmons' finger, which pointed to a dark, shadowy area on Diesel's leg. It looked like a bruise, a deep, dark bruise that was unlike anything John had seen before. It was as though something had been pressing against Diesel's bone, something heavy, something that had been there for a long time. That's when the pieces started to come together. John's chest tightened as the realization hit him, like a ton of bricks. The bruising, the abnormal fractures. It was as if Diesel had been subjected to extreme pressure. But how? The vet's voice was steady, but John could hear the concern in his tone. This kind of trauma isn't something that happens by accident. These fractures look like they were caused by repeated stress, not by a single incident. Someone or something has been putting pressure on Diesel's leg for a while. John's blood ran cold. His mind raced. The only people who had access to Diesel, other than John, were the other K9 handlers at the department. But who would hurt a dog like Diesel? Someone who had dedicated his life to protecting people? It made no sense. The room was eerily quiet as Dr. Simmons continued to explain what they were seeing. John's mind, however, was elsewhere, caught in a whirlwind of confusion, anger, and disbelief. Diesel had been hurt, and the wounds weren't from the field. They weren't from the job they both loved. These were injuries that had been inflicted on Diesel deliberately. Someone had been hurting Diesel, and John was determined to find out who. John's hands were shaking as he stood in front of Dr. Simmons, staring at the x-ray. His mind was reeling, trying to process the information in front of him. Diesel's injuries were not accidental. The dark shadow on the x-ray, the fractured bones, the deep bruising, it all pointed to something far more sinister. The realization hit him like a cold slap in the face. Someone or something had deliberately caused Diesel harm. "John, are you all right?" Dr. Simmons' voice broke through the storm of thoughts in John's head. John blinked, his gaze still fixed on the x-ray. "No, Doc, no. This can't be right. Diesel's been through hell and back, but nothing like this." His voice faltered, the weight of the discovery settling heavily in his chest. Dr. Simmons reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder, his touch gentle but firm. "I know this is tough, but we need to get to the bottom of this. Diesel's been through something, and it's not just a minor injury. We need to take action." John nodded numbly, his thoughts scattered. He knew Diesel better than anyone. Diesel was strong, resilient, and loyal to a fault. But the thought that his partner, his best friend, had been enduring pain in silence, possibly at the hands of someone they trusted, was too much to bear. As the vet began preparing for more tests, John couldn't help but replay the days leading up to this discovery. Was there something he missed? Could there have been signs of abuse or mistreatment that he overlooked? He thought back to the moments when Diesel had acted out of character, when his energy seemed off, when he was quieter than usual, but none of it seemed to fit. Diesel had never shown signs of weakness before. He had always been the one to push through injuries and pain. But now, it was clear that something had been eating away at him, something that wasn't just physical. The next few hours felt like an eternity. John sat in the sterile waiting room of Dr. Simmons' clinic, his mind clouded with dark thoughts. Diesel had been taken to the back for more tests, and John was left alone with his thoughts. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Diesel's tired eyes staring back at him. He saw the limp, the way Diesel had carried himself like a soldier burdened with a heavy load. Something didn't add up. Then, just as the unease was starting to settle into a gnawing anxiety, the door to the clinic opened. Dr. Simmons walked out, his face grave. "John, we've got the results," he said quietly, his eyes not meeting John's. John stood up quickly, his heart racing. "What's going on? Is he okay? What happened to him?" The vet sighed deeply, taking a seat across from John. "I'm afraid Diesel has suffered more than just a physical injury. What we're seeing here is the result of consistent, prolonged stress and trauma. His injuries, they weren't caused by an accident. They were caused by force. Force that should never have been applied to a dog like him." John's stomach twisted, his breathing shallow. He leaned forward, his voice cracking as he asked, "What do you mean? Who would do something like this?" Dr. Simmons met his gaze then, his eyes filled with sympathy. "It's hard to say for sure without knowing all the facts, but from what I can see, it's clear that Diesel has been subjected to intense pressure, something beyond what's normal for a working dog. This isn't the result of an accident on the job, John. Diesel's bones are showing signs of repetitive strain, and the bruising, it's too deep to be just a simple injury. Whoever did this didn't just hurt him once. They kept pushing him." John's blood ran cold, his mind reeled with disbelief. "You're telling me that someone has been hurting him?" Dr. Simmons gave a somber nod. "Yes, and it's not something that happens overnight. This kind of trauma takes time. Diesel has been living with this for weeks, maybe longer." John's head spun. He couldn't make sense of it. Who would hurt Diesel? He thought back to all the other K9 handlers, all the people he trusted at the department. They were all part of the team, working together to keep the community safe. But now, the seed of doubt had been planted. As the pieces began to fall into place, the anger bubbled up inside him. Someone had betrayed Diesel, someone who should have been looking out for him, just as John had always done. But who? The next few days were a blur. John could barely focus on anything outside of Diesel's recovery. He stayed by the dog's side as much as possible, trying to offer comfort, while keeping his suspicions close to his chest. Diesel's condition improved slowly, but the pain in John's heart was palpable. He felt betrayed, disgusted by the idea that someone had been harming his partner. He couldn't fathom who would do such a thing. Dr. Simmons had done everything he could to help Diesel heal, but the emotional scars were harder to fix. Diesel wasn't the same. His eyes no longer held the same spark they once had. There was a sadness there, a heaviness that couldn't be erased with treatment or care. It was as though Diesel had learned that the world he trusted wasn't as safe as he once thought, and John couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Whoever had hurt Diesel was still out there, and they could still be doing the same thing to other dogs. The thought of that made his blood boil. John knew he couldn't wait any longer. He had to take action. He had to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. That's when John decided to take matters into his own hands. He couldn't rely solely on Dr. Simmons' findings. He needed to dig deeper. He began reaching out to other K9 handlers, asking them questions, trying to piece together a timeline of events leading up to Diesel's injuries. At first, it was just routine conversations, small talk about their training sessions and recent calls. But as John pressed for more details, the answers started to feel wrong. He asked about Diesel's training partners, about the shifts they worked, and about the interactions between handlers. And slowly, the cracks began to show. It wasn't until John spoke with one of the junior handlers, a young man named Tom, that things began to click. Tom had always been a quiet, reserved guy, but John had always felt a sense of camaraderie with him. As they spoke one day in the break room, John noticed something in Tom's demeanor, something strange, something that didn't feel right. "What's going on with Diesel, John?" Tom asked, a little too casually. "He's been out for a while, hasn't he? I heard he got hurt pretty bad." John studied him carefully, watching for any signs of discomfort or nervousness. "Yeah, he's recovering. But I have to ask, have you noticed anything strange at our training sessions? Anything at all about Diesel or about the way he's been treated?" Tom shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting away from John's. For a brief moment, John saw fear flash across his face. "I don't know what you're talking about," Tom said, his voice tight. "I've never seen anything wrong." But it was the way Tom spoke, the hesitation in his voice, that made John's stomach churn. There was something Tom wasn't telling him, something he was hiding. John felt a surge of determination. The pieces were finally coming together, but the final truth was still out of reach. Someone was involved in Diesel's abuse, someone close to him, and no matter how much it hurt, John was willing to uncover that truth, even if it meant going to the darkest corners of his own department. The investigation had reached a boiling point. John felt like he was swimming in a sea of half-truths, whispers, and unsettling glances. No matter how many K9 handlers he spoke to, or how many shifts he reviewed, the answers always seemed just out of reach. But one conversation stood out, one small detail that sent a shiver down his spine and made his blood run cold. It had been 2 weeks since the vet had revealed Diesel's x-ray, and John's patience was wearing thin. Diesel was recovering physically, but the emotional toll was evident. The once vibrant, energetic German shepherd now lay on his bed, his eyes vacant, as if waiting for something or someone to fix the broken trust that had been shattered within him. John could see it in his eyes. Diesel wasn't just hurt, he was betrayed, and he had been carrying the weight of that betrayal silently for far too long. John had spent nights poring over every detail of Diesel's life, their calls, their shared experiences, their training sessions. But the turning point came when he visited the training grounds again, hoping to speak with more handlers. It was a hazy afternoon, and the air was thick with tension as John approached the usual training area. His eyes scanned the familiar surroundings, the large obstacle courses, the climbing walls, the scent of dirt, and the steel of training equipment. But there was a slight shift in the atmosphere, an unfamiliar chill. That's when John saw Tom again. Tom had always been the quiet one, reserved and often isolated from the others. He was an enigma to John, but he had always been respectful, until now. As John walked toward the training area, he saw Tom standing in the corner, away from the rest of the group. He was alone, staring down at the ground with a faraway expression. His usual stoic demeanor seemed cracked, and something was different. The way he was looking down at the ground, his hands clenched by his sides, wasn't like the Tom John had known. John's heart skipped a beat as the suspicion he had carried for days now began to take form. "Tom," John called out, his voice calm but firm. "We need to talk." Tom stiffened, almost imperceptibly. Before looking up, his eyes flickered with a mixture of guilt and fear, and for a moment, John could have sworn he saw the hint of sweat gathering on his forehead. "John, I didn't expect you," Tom stammered, wiping his hands on his pants. John didn't miss the nervousness in Tom's voice. He had always been good at reading people, and right now, something about Tom's behavior was screaming that something was very wrong. "I need to know the truth," John said, his voice steady, though his heart was pounding in his chest. "I need to know what happened to Diesel. What's going on here, Tom?" Tom's face paled, and he took a step back. "I don't know what you mean," he said, his voice trembling. "Diesel is fine, right? The vet already said it's nothing serious." John's anger flared, but he controlled it. "No, it's not nothing serious. You and I both know Diesel didn't get injured by accident. And you know something, Tom. I need you to tell me what happened. Now." For a moment, Tom said nothing. Then, with a shaky breath, he spoke in a barely audible voice. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't know what else to do." John's stomach dropped as he stepped forward, his voice now tight with anger. "What are you talking about? What did you do to him?" Tom swallowed hard, avoiding John's eyes. "I was trying to train him, all right? Just trying to push him a little harder, you know? We're supposed to be the best. Diesel's one of the top K9’s in the department, and I wanted to show that I could get him to perform better. But I didn't know it would hurt him. It just happened, and I didn't stop." John's fists clenched, his heart racing. "You abused him, didn't you? You pushed him beyond his limits, Tom. You did this to him." Tom's face contorted, and he looked away. "I didn't mean to hurt him. I thought he could handle it. You thought you could break him," John snapped, cutting him off. "You used your power over him. You made him suffer. And you didn't care, did you?" Tom's eyes welled with tears, but his voice remained defensive. "I didn't know. It wasn't supposed to go this way. I swear. I was just doing my job." John took a step back, breathing heavily. He was enraged. The betrayal stung deeper than any injury Diesel could have sustained. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a pattern of abuse, of cruelty, inflicted on a dog who trusted his handler completely. "You pushed him too hard. For what? To make a point? To prove that you were the best?" John's voice trembled with fury. "You broke him, Tom, and you didn't even think twice about it. You didn't stop." Tom's face turned pale as the full weight of his actions seemed to hit him all at once. The tears began to fall, but it was too little, too late. John had seen enough. "You're not fit to work with these dogs," John spat, his voice shaking with rage. "You're not fit to be a part of this team." For a long time, neither of them spoke. John could hardly process what he had just learned. The anger and hurt mixed in his chest, churning like a storm he couldn't control. His loyal partner, Diesel, had been hurt by someone who should have been his protector, someone who had sworn to uphold the same values John held dear. But it was more than that. Diesel had been betrayed by the very people he trusted. John took a deep breath, his hands trembling at his sides as he struggled to keep his composure. "I don't know what else to say," John muttered, his voice strained. "You need to go, Tom. You're done here. And if I have anything to do with it, you'll never work with animals again." Tom's shoulders slumped as if the weight of John's words crushed him. He nodded, defeated. John turned and walked away, the realization of what had happened sinking deeper into his bones. As much as he wanted to feel satisfaction, all he felt was emptiness. Diesel wasn't just physically hurt, he was mentally and emotionally scarred, and that was something John couldn't fix overnight. But what he could do was make sure Tom would never hurt anyone again, and that gave him a small sense of justice, a small victory in the midst of a painful loss. In the days that followed, John made sure that Tom was immediately removed from the department. His actions were not only unforgivable, they were inexcusable. The abuse Diesel had suffered was brought to light, and the department took swift action to ensure that no other dog would fall victim to such cruelty. As for Diesel, his recovery was slow. The emotional scars would take time to heal, but the physical ones were beginning to fade. John spent every waking moment with his K9 partner, helping him through his recovery, reminding him of the bond they shared. He wasn't going to let this tragedy define their partnership. Diesel deserved better, and John would give him that. But it wasn't just Diesel who needed healing. John did too. The betrayal had shaken him to his core. He had spent years trusting his colleagues, believing in the strength of his team, only to find that one of them had been an abuser all along. But the healing process had begun, and it would take time for both of them. The days that followed the revelation were a whirlwind of emotions for John. It was as if everything he had believed in had been shaken to its core. The trust he had in his team, in the people who were supposed to protect the animals they worked with, had been shattered. And while he had made sure that Tom was removed from the department, that didn't erase the hurt. The scars on Diesel's body would heal, but the emotional wounds would linger far longer. John sat beside Diesel's bed late one evening, the glow of a single lamp casting a soft light over the room. The dog lay quietly, his eyes half closed, his body still as if every movement required a monumental effort. It had been a few weeks since Tom had been removed from the department, but Diesel was still far from his old self. John gently ran his fingers through Diesel's fur, the way he always did when he needed comfort. Diesel was more than just a partner. He was family. They had shared so much, faced dangers that would have broken anyone else. But this betrayal, it cut deeper than any injury John had ever experienced. "You know, Diesel, I'll never forgive myself for not seeing it sooner," John murmured, his voice quiet, almost to himself. "You've been through so much, and I wasn't there to stop it." But as he sat there, stroking Diesel's fur, he realized something. The guilt, though powerful, was not going to bring Diesel back to his old self. It wasn't going to undo the pain that they had both suffered. What they needed now wasn't guilt. It wasn't punishment. What they needed was healing. Together, John had spent so many years focused on saving others, on running into burning buildings, and facing down danger without hesitation, that he had forgotten the most important thing, protecting those closest to him. Diesel had always been there for him, had always given everything he had to save others. It was time John gave everything he had to help Diesel heal. For the next several weeks, John poured all his energy into Diesel's recovery. He took time off from his shifts, spending every moment with his partner, helping him through the physical therapy, and more importantly, reassuring him that he was safe now. Diesel's trust had been broken, not just in people, but in the very world he had spent his life protecting. But John was determined to rebuild that trust, one step at a time. It wasn't an easy road. Diesel was distant at first, refusing to engage in the playful activities they used to enjoy. His movements were slow, his eyes guarded, but John never gave up on him. He'd sit with Diesel for hours, just talking to him, reminding him of the bond they shared. He would take him on slow walks, just the two of them, letting Diesel take the lead, giving him control over his environment again. With each passing day, Diesel began to open up again. His tail, once so still, started to wag. When John entered the room, his eyes slowly regained that familiar spark of joy, the same spark that had always been there during their countless adventures together. It was a slow process, but it was a process that John could see, he could feel, was working. One afternoon, while they were out for a walk, Diesel paused at the edge of the park, sniffing the air. John stood beside him, waiting patiently. Diesel turned his head toward John, his eyes filled with a silent question. "Ready to get back to work?" John asked softly, his voice filled with a hope he hadn't felt in weeks. Diesel's tail wagged slightly, and for the first time in what felt like forever, John saw the dog's old confidence return. The bond they shared, the trust they had in one another, was slowly being restored. John's heart swelled with emotion, watching as Diesel moved forward, his limping steps no longer as hesitant. It wasn't just Diesel who was healing. John was healing too. The bitterness of the betrayal still lingered, but with every moment he spent with Diesel, he was reminded of what mattered most: loyalty, love, and the unwavering bond that had carried them both through the darkest of times. They had been through so much together, and while the scars of the past would never fully fade, John knew that as long as they were together, they could face anything that came their way. Months passed, and Diesel's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. He had become a symbol of resilience, not just for John, but for everyone who knew their story. The department welcomed Diesel back, but this time, things were different. John had learned to trust his instincts even more, to protect Diesel, and to never take their bond for granted again. The day they returned to full duty, John and Diesel were once again a team, stronger than ever. The other handlers treated Diesel with the respect he deserved, and John kept a closer eye on everything, ensuring no one would ever betray his partner again. They worked together to save lives, bring criminals to justice, and protect the city they loved. Diesel had become more than just a K9. He had become a symbol of what true loyalty and trust could accomplish, a living testament to the power of healing and the strength of the human-animal bond. But it wasn't just the work they did that mattered. It was the unspoken understanding between them, the quiet moments when John would glance at Diesel and see the trust in his eyes, knowing that no matter what happened, they would always have each other's backs. As John looked at Diesel, ready for whatever the day had in store, he realized that their story wasn't just about one man and one dog. It was about the extraordinary bond between them, the resilience to overcome pain and betrayal, and the unbreakable trust that defined their relationship. And now, as their journey continued, John wanted to share their story with others. He wanted the world to see just how powerful love and loyalty could be, how animals, especially K9’s like Diesel, deserve more than just our protection. They deserve our respect and devotion. So, if you believe in the strength of bonds that go beyond words, in the power of loyalty and healing, then consider subscribing to our channel. There are more incredible stories of heroism, friendship, and love that need to be shared. Click below and join us as we continue to celebrate the amazing connections we share with our loyal pets. Diesel's journey is just one of many that deserve to be told.